YouTube. My name is Harrison, and I am an aspiring writer. And I've been working on a novel for a little while, but I wanted to try and work on it more in the new year and hopefully self-publish it by Halloween this year. So I thought it would be good motivation to create a blog and to make YouTube videos surrounding my work and my process and stuff. And I thought it would be fun to share. So that's what this is. This is the first video I'm making. Um, the book that I am working on is called The Trail. This here is my website, which will be linked below. But I decided to make a Squarespace website. Originally, it was just so I had a nice place to have my portfolio for applying for writing jobs. So I've just got like a few small examples of things that I've written that might be applicable to jobs I was applying to, but I also just recently added this writing blog section where I wrote out this whole thing about my progress so far and my goals, and a little bit about the story. Feel free to go to the website and look at what I've written here, and I'll try to do more blog posts soon. But basically this video will cover similar things. I just wanted to sort of go over where I'm at in my project now and what my process is, talk about the software I use for writing, that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm going to move over to my campfire writing page. I've used campfire writing for a few years now to work on this project. And I'm not sponsored or anything, but I just wanted to share sort of what mine looks like. It might be interesting or helpful for other people working on their writing. If you do want to purchase Campfire, I'll put a link to it in the description. Actually, there is a free version. You get like a limited amount of each module that you can use for free, and it is modules, so there are different elements that you can pick and choose to either use or not use. You get a limited amount for free. Otherwise, you can pay monthly per module or yearly per module, or you can buy individual modules. So you can kind of mix and match and decide if you want to commit to just purchasing them outright or if you want to pay monthly or whatever. But campfire writing is really useful software, especially if you've got a lot of characters or locations or research or world building that you want to include. I'll just go over some of the basic things I have in mind, which will also kind of show you the progress of my story so far. So you can customize a lot of the visuals, which is really nice. I've got this banner that I made in Canva just for the vibe. So when I'm here working on my story, I kind of have access to the ambiance of my story. And there's also a few customizable themes for the like background and the font and stuff that you see here. So I think mine is like I don't know, something urban, like an urban sci-fi sort of thing, but it matches a ruined city in my story, so I went with that. Yeah, and then on your dashboard here, there are pinned elements, so you can pin characters you want to see, you want to have quick access to, or chapters, or locations, or bits of research, anything you want, you can pin here so you have quick access to things. Recent will just show you the last things you were working on. Stats here show you the hours you've spent in the software. Words written, which does not just include your manuscript, it also includes like characters and notes and stuff. So I think I've got about 50,000 words in my actual manuscript, and then there's some more for characters and notes and stuff. And then here's a little note thing where you can just add some ideas. I tend to just jot down like vague story ideas for things that are upcoming, which sometimes change, sometimes they don't. Sometimes I go back here and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not using that anymore. But it gives you just a place to jot things down quickly. And then there's all these different modules over here, which I will show you some of and how I am using them. So under characters, you can see I've got like, I think I counted and there's like 70 or so characters that I've made so far. But you can see my main character. Maybe she's not the best example because she does not have an actual appearance. Basically, I mean she's described as wickedly tall and not white. And that's about it for a concrete description intentionally. So this image is just a very, very vague, like just really for the ethos or the atmosphere more than what she actually looks like. But I'll show you some of the other characters. And then I haven't gone in and added all of this, but you can add different attributes, her age, astrological sign, gender, sexual orientation, language, pronouns. You can add all sorts of stuff. She's the one that I've filled out the most for, but I still, even on her, have not filled out that much. But it's helpful to keep track of things. Maybe even things that your readers will never see, but are useful for your own consideration, especially thinking about their character arc and how they might change over the course of their story, and like what their major like flaws and desires and fears are. So that's helpful for that. You can also add physical traits, statistics, personality traits. And if you go up to add panel, you can add more things, more images, or you could delete any of these that you don't want to use, and you can move them around too. So it's all completely customizable, whatever works best for you. Oh, and under details here, it'll show you the name of the thing, a description, and the image. Which here I just have the same image for both, but there might be times when you have different images, or a main image and then some other images. Yeah, so my main three characters, Mars, I imagine looking something like this. I just kind of did Google searches for random people until I found people that fit. So some of them are just random people who exist in the world. Some of them are like stock photos. Some of them are famous people. Some of them are actors that I knew and looked up to add in as a face of the character. Obviously, this is not something that, except for this video that I'm making now, something that readers would see. It's just for my own reference, especially because I have aphantasia, so I can't see images in my head. So it is very useful to have an image that I can stare directly at as I write things about a character. And yeah, so this is Mars. They're one of my three main characters. And then Inspector Defarge, who I used this actor to represent because I imagine he looks similar to this. I think he's bald or has very short hair, and I think facial hair and maybe starting to turn gray or white. So I think this is a good match for him. There's a whole bunch here. I have the mayor, who's one of the villains. I just combined a picture of Trump and Nixon because he is clearly, obviously, reminiscent of both of them. So that just gives me sort of a baseline when I'm looking at him. And then my other main villain is Justice here. And I don't remember where I found this picture. I think it's just a random person. So hopefully these random people will never watch this video. I assume they won't, but I would feel bad if they did for using their images. I'm sorry. It's just for my inspiration as I write. So moving on to the manuscript, we have each of the chapters broken down under manuscripts, so you can work in one chapter at a time, which is really nice, so you're not overwhelming yourself with trying to worry about connecting chapters and like the order they go in, because you can always move them, although I have all mine numbered, which makes it annoying when I decide that I'm gonna move things. But you know, and then I have a few here that I don't know quite where they belong yet, or I've rewritten some of them, I don't know, but we've got quite a few chapters here. I think there's like 37, 38, I don't know. The numbers go up to 34, and then there's a few other ones. So yeah, this is my first chapter. It's very short. All my chapters are pretty short because it switches pretty quickly between perspectives. They're mostly told from the three main characters' perspectives of the woman, Mars, and Defarge. But also some of the villains and some other secondary characters are going to have perspective chapters. But yeah, the first 4 chapters are also on my website that I will be linking below. So if anyone wants to check out my first 4 chapters, and I would love any feedback. They're going to change a lot before it is published, but they're what I have so far. So if you go down to the trail here, then view project, this link here will take you to the first 4, or the first, 4 chapters from the perspectives of the woman, Mars, Inspector Defarge, and the mayor. And they're very short chapters, but I think they're pretty indicative of what I want to do with the whole project. And any feedback would be very much appreciated. But yeah, those are there if anyone wants to check them out. I think as I work more, I may post a few more chapters on here, just so people who might be interested can see if the book is something that they like, or to give feedback. I would love any feedback really from anyone. But yeah, those are the manuscript chapters. You can like export them and save them as a Word document or whatever, all the things you might want to do. And there is like a publishing thing. Don't really know how it works, and I don't really plan to use it in Campfire. I'm probably gonna take everything to a different program that's specifically for like what's it called, book formatting, you know, for things like font and margins and spacing and like chapter headers and things. I would like to use the program that's specifically for that so I can get as much out of it as possible, but that'll obviously be way later after I finish writing and edit some. etc. So other modules, there are locations. I just have some sort of landmarks along the trail, which is the fictional world that my story takes place in. It is the fictionalized version of the Appalachian Trail. So here is the southernmost point. Old Woman Springs Road is basically the end of the trail in Georgia, whereas the other side is in Maine. And you can see the necropolis, the city, unrequited love lake. There's all these different locations. And I've added some, I don't know if they all have images. It might just take a second to load. Maybe under details, yeah. So I've added some vague images to give me an idea and just written the name of the place over the top. And this ties in then to the map module where I only have 2 maps, which is what you get in the free version, which is enough for me for this project. But I have the real Appalachian Trail here in a lot of detail. As you can see, all the way from Georgia to Maine. So you can follow it all the way up. You can zoom in and find little locations, and all of my locations are kind of mapped on top of real world locations just to make sure that they make sense. But they are fiction. They are like fully fictional, like fantasy sort of locations, but they are mapped on top of the real thing just for my own knowledge and to make sure that I know the distances between everything and whatnot. But the actual fictional map, then oops, did I just move Virginia? I must have because it's over New Jersey. Edit, do, my bad. It's taking a second to load in, but here is my map of the trail, my world in my book. You can see the sort of progression from the southernmost point through the city up through the Emily Dickinson Church here. We have in the middle there's Mecca, which is a city with a huge interfaith church. Spanish cloister, which is based on there's some sort of like house, like little shack thing on the real Appalachian Trail that's like named after a monk or something, or it has the name monk in it. I don't know. The actual picture here is the picture of it, so it's a little shack that people sleep in on the Appalachian Trail. But I thought because of the monk thing, I was thinking of like those old Gothic stories from like the 1700s of like I think one's just called The Monk. It's I think an Italian story, or there's definitely Italian versions. And then I know there was one guy who was like competing with Anne Radcliffe, and they were writing different like stories about monks, like Gothic, scary stories about monks. And so there was this whole genre of like scary monk stories going on. And I named this the Spanish Cloister after there's I think a short story called something of the Spanish Cloister. I can't remember. I've read it, but basically I wanted to tie in that sort of mythology of the scary Gothic monk story into this location here. So I haven't written that part yet, but that is my plan. There's the Mason-Dixon line, so that's an actual location, obviously, in the real world. We have Mayerville, which is like a fictionalized Hooverville outside of New York, which is where sort of all the people who have been harmed by the mayor's totalitarian and horrible economic policies have ended up. there's this Mount Hickory with a dome at the top, which is sort of a combination of just like elements of hiking up a mountain combined with like a biodome, but also like a end of the world bunker for a cult, because I was thinking of Mount Weather, which is supposedly where the U.S. government, the president, whatever, would go in the case of a nuclear anything sort of world ending. That's one of the main bunkers that probably the U.S. president would go. So yeah, I just want to play with that and the idea of a cult and whatnot. 10 times, that sort of thing. Universal Carnival of Human Rights. There's the Edgar Allan Poe Church in opposition to the Emily Dickinson Church early on. And then it all ends at Mount Ararat, which of course is named after the mountain that the Noah's Ark supposedly landed on in the Hebrew Bible. Although actually in the text it just says the mountains of Ararat, which was just a name for that sort of area of like Georgia, Turkey. But the mythology has become that it's Mount Ararat specifically. Anyway, that shows you how I use the map. For my world, it's really important for a story like this because obviously the thrust of it is that they are traveling from, Old Woman Springs Road to the peak of Mount Ararat. Yeah, so then there is research as well. I've got this folder of flora. This is mostly what I've used the research for so far, is just plants. Just plants that are actually on the actual Appalachian Trail or in Appalachia. And yeah, just some images of what they look like, so I can have sort of a grounded real world botany, I guess, as the backdrop of the trail. Especially because one of my characters, Therese Defarge, is very interested in gardening and plants, so it's important for him to know a lot about plants, and so therefore I need to have access to this. I also have a physical like pamphlet brochure thing that shows a bunch of the main plants on the Appalachian Trail, so I use that when I write as well. But yeah, research you can use for anything. You can put just pieces of information you have looked up. You can also link it to a web page, like I've linked pages about each plant here. You can see this just sort of imports the text from the web page, which is a nice handy way to have all your research in one place and not have to have like tabs of different research and stuff. It can be really helpful for anything that needs a lot of like real world research to back up what you're doing. And what else? Timelines. Probably don't want to show too much of the timelines since I don't want to spoil the whole book, but here you can see basics. I've got several timelines for different characters, but my main timeline, I've got the season so I don't forget what season it is. I've got the date on all of these so you can see the time progression by day. I've got the amount of miles remaining until they get to the northern point of the Appalachian Trail, as well as the amount of miles that have elapsed from the southern point. I also have a physical guidebook for the Appalachian Trail that tells me all the distances between every single point along the real Appalachian Trail, so I use that to map out where things are on mine. This shows the chapters, so throughout these chapters they're at this location or heading to the next location. in during these dates, and you can see the gaps between them. See, this is the same day. The amount of miles that uh they take, so 3 and 2, and then there's 21. So you can see that there's a bigger date range as they go more miles. Yeah, I don't want to show too much of that, like I said, because spoilers. Calendar I haven't really used, but you can tie in a calendar to this timeline, so you can just see it in actual calendar format, which is nice and useful. But I haven't gotten around to doing that yet. Arcs, I don't really use the arcs because I use a spreadsheet for my arcs, which maybe I'll show at some point in a different video. But this is tracking like character arcs. So basically, similar to how the timeline tracks the progression of events, arcs will track the progression of character arcs, you know, personality traits and like faults and uh, growth and things that change in a character throughout a story. Relationships I haven't used yet, but you can make like a family tree or something. My main characters are not familially connected, and their family is pretty limited. Just kind of a main point of a lot of uh, their arcs, so I don't need that as much. Encyclopedia is just another place to add. It's kind of like the research. It just lets you add more stuff. It could be really useful for world building if you've just got a bunch of like extra stuff, especially for fantasy or sci-fi. A lot of these endings are relevant for fantasy, sci-fi, and RPGs, games, role-playing games, but not necessarily relevant for all books, which is why it's so good that you can pick and choose which modules you want to use and which ones you want to pay for the full experience, or just use the free versions. But yeah, quickly, these last ones that are more sci-fi and fantasy oriented, you can add a magic system, you can add different species, cultures, items, so like, weapons or mystical magical objects. I've only got like, there's a sword that's important to my story, but I know that sword, I don't really need to make an items thing just for that sword. Systems is just sort of for hierarchies and flowcharts and things, so it's, similar to a magic system, but setting up systems for everything else. Languages, similar. Religions, philosophies, all that is pretty similar. World building stuff for sci-fi fantasy. So yeah, that basically covers what I've got here in Campfire. I guess the last thing I want to do is go over just a little bit of what my story is about, in case anyone is curious. I've been working on it for a few years now, and I am hopefully going to publish, like I said, by Halloween this year. I'm going to work hard to work on it every day, and also to make some of these blogs and vlogs to show off my progress, and also to sort of hold myself accountable. So like I said, you can check out my website. You can check out my website if you are so inclined. But here on my writing blog, you can see a few things. I talk about how the genre of my story is hard to pin down. Even like a summary or themes are a little bit elusive, which is why I didn't open with that really. But a lot of people do want to know what your story is about, and so I struggle with that. But here I've got some elements that are present in the story. So we've got it's a lot like those stories of people hiking the Appalachian Trail for personal growth, and the parallels between their physical journey and their inner journey, that sort of thing. It also was a little bit inspired by like the Odyssey and like Doll Bones by Holly Black, which sort of is one of those stories that follows the basic like idea of the Odyssey, where a character or several characters are going from place to place to place, and they meet a few key characters there, but they don't really come back up again. And there is this overarching story, but um, it's also sort of like little vignettes or tableaus, little moments where they're with each character. Like Odysseus seeing the Cyclops, Polyphemus on one island, and then there's the island he's stuck on with Calypso, and there's the two sea monster sections, and the part when he gets back to Ithaca. Is that what it's called? It's been a long time since I've read the Odyssey, but uh, you know that general idea. And then there's also a lot of elements of like, I say urban fantasy, even though it's kind of a rural thing because they're sort of isolated in the trail and in small towns for most of it. Although there is the sprawling ruined city that has been overtaken by plants. But I say urban fantasy in the sense of like, modern, sort of rough fantasy, sort of like Shadowhunters, a lot of young adult rough modern city fantasy. Like, what would it be like if there's vampires and fairies living in a city? It's got some shades of that. And then magical realism, just in the sense that I kind of want to make it sort of like literary, just like, contemporary, you know, generic novel in some ways, but there are fantastical elements, liminal spaces, monsters, demons that are sort of uh, metaphorical for the reader and metaphysical for the characters, if that makes sense. And then there's also a lot of elements of horror. A lot of it's sort of Edgar Allan Poe-esque. I don't really like a lot of horror, like slasher, like a lot of monster stuff, zombies. I'm not really into a lot of that. But I love Edgar Allan Poe. I love things being just like creepy, gothic, Victorian, kind of dark, kind of realistic and normal on the surface with sort of darkness hidden underneath, like the House of Usher, the whole idea of like a fairly normal facade with decay underneath. So yeah, there's probably a lot of Edgar Allan Poe influence, but also very uncanny and liminal. I think of like Welcome to Night Vale, the podcast, or also kind of like the Twilight Zone, where everything's just a little bit off because the trail is like the Appalachian Trail, but everything's a little bit twisted. In the sense that I would say the real world is twisted, just not aesthetically. It's twisted like, morals and uh so many horrible things happening in the world, but it's got this nice veneer of safety because it's just generic and normal. So I kind of like to play with subverting that, I guess. I don't know if any of that makes sense. I'm just speaking ideas as they pop into my head. There's also some Lovecraftian sort of. I mean, I haven't really read Lovecraft, but like, there's some monsters a little bit, or like demons, depending on how you interpret them. And then also playing a little bit with the cryptozoology of Appalachia, which is a common thing. There's um, a lot of uh, myths and cryptozoological creatures and um, all that stuff that is very prevalent in that area. But I also want to be very cognizant of the fact that a lot of it is the product of racism. you know, that there's a lot tied into like Bigfoot and like wild people and like cannibals that are just like villainizing marginalized people, homeless people, people without means to sustain themselves, people who just have been marginalized by society and have chosen to exit it, to stay away from elements of it. Also, you know, indigenous people, basically just any other people, any people who they don't understand, who people in power don't understand, have gotten sort of mythologized into these like cryptozoological monsters instead of, you know, just marginalized people who are trying to hide away and escape from people who have power over them. So I want to be aware of that in my use of folklore and creatures and things like that. And then there's also a very central focus on queerness, gender, sexuality, religion, politics, socialism, anti racism, and anti fascism, which obviously are all very closely connected. I'm really interested in religion and sacred texts. Um, so I try to include a lot of elements of that. I am hoping they're not too confusing for people who are not as into those things. Um, but yeah, also very much at the core of the characters is um, gender and sexuality, and you know, other ways in which they're marginalized on different axes of power, um, which is a very core theme of the story. And the villains also reflect that in the ways that they have power and the ways that they are bigots. And then the landscape of the trail itself is a lot inspired by COVID. The idea of a plague ridden city that's been consumed by the forest is sort of like a COVID taken to its extreme, to its end. Um, you know, if we didn't have anyone at all getting vaccines, you know, it is quite bad how it has been, but this is just sort of that taken to its extreme. So there's a lot of like isolation and just sort of the vibes surrounding COVID were a big inspiration for a lot of things in the story. So yeah, I would say those are like five major points of things that the story is about. But I am not very good at being concise, obviously, and I am not very good at, you know, boiling it down into simple talking points, which I don't know how that's going to be when I publish and try to market this book. But yeah, that's where I'm at. If anyone has advice on that, feel free to let me know. We have some of the main characters, the woman who is, you know, a woman escaping a loveless marriage. She also uh, is sort of, as she meets these queer characters in Mars and Defarge, she sort of explores the possibility of maybe expanding the idea of what she thinks of herself beyond just a woman. Um, but yeah, she does not have a name. She's just the woman. She has a pet pig named Orlando. Um, and yeah, she's escaping a loveless marriage. She drove across the country from California, threw her phone off a bridge, so she has no contact with anyone. And she started hiking with her pet pig Orlando. And then Mars is a non binary teenager from near the southernmost point of the trail, somewhere in Georgia. And they are escaping abusive parents. They have a lot of layers of pressure. Their parents have their mother's Korean and their father is half Italian and half Latino, so they have a lot of elements of cultural pressure and mixed culture, especially the way that conflicts with the fundamentalist, conservative Christian views of their parents, and then their gender, which can both be in conflict with those cultural aspects and also with the expectations of a fundamentalist evangelical upbringing, obviously. So all of these are layers of things that Mars is trying to process and escape simultaneously. And then Defarge is a gay man from Louisiana. He is black, so he is marginalized in several ways. All my three main characters are people of color, which I'm aware that I'm white, so I will try really hard to work with sensitivity readers and other beta readers who can hopefully help me make sure that I do my best to represent people who have very different experiences from me in the best way that I can. That'll definitely be a challenge when it comes to editing and stuff. But it is very important to me that they all have a strong sense of identity grounded in aspects of their character that are oppressed, marginalized, suppressed by the forces in their society. That's a lot what the book is hopefully going to be about. And yeah, so Defarge was a political activist in the city, along with his husband Kane. And Defarge was a gardener, and Kane was a university history teacher. And as the city became more and more fascist, as the centrists continued to move further right and the mayor continued to gain more power, people started leaving the city, people started trying to escape, but they stayed because Kane Defarge wanted to help his students see through the propaganda, and eventually the mayor killed Kane, and eventually after that destroyed the whole city and killed everyone remaining except for Defarge and his pet monkey Slurpee. So Defarge is now traveling the trail, trying to get revenge for his husband and his city against the mayor, trying to track him down and kill him. So yeah, those are the three main protagonists. The major antagonists, there are a few others, but the main ones are the mayor of that city, fascist mayor, started out as a centrist, but quickly became fascist. And then his sister, who kind of takes over after him and carries the torch. And her name is Justice. So those are most of the main characters. We already talked about sort of my progress, like 50,000 words ish. A lot of this I talked about. I'm hoping to self-publish by Halloween. So hopefully I'll have enough time to finish writing. I'm like 50,000 words into a first draft, but I'd say I'm no more than like a third of the way through the plot points that I want to hit. So I am worried that it'll be kind of long, but that's sort of what the writing that's left will entail, like 100,000-ish more words, maybe something like that. I don't really know. And then from there, editing. Like I said, hopefully trying to work with beta readers and sensitivity readers to make sure, I'm representing everyone in good faith. Yeah, and then hopefully self-publishing on Amazon. I don't really know what I'm doing with that, but I will do my best to figure it out. Yeah, so if anyone stuck around to watch all of this, I really appreciate you listening to my rambles about my story and where I'm at. Campfire writing as software, my writing process a little bit. If you have any questions about my story, about my writing process, about Campfire, anything really, feel free to put those in the comments. if you have feedback for my first 4 chapters, you can leave those in the comments or email me or anything. If you have advice, suggestions for publishing, for editing, for sensitivity readers, finding people, anything like that, feel free to drop them in the comments. Let me know. If you're working on a story, a novel, something, you can also let me know about that. I'd love to hear what you're working on, how your process is looking, what your goals are for 2025, anything like that. Feel free to let me know. Yeah, I think that's about it. I will try to make more of these. I will continue updating my blog on my website to share my progress. I wrote at least 1,000 words today. I'm probably going to try to write some more before the end of the day. And I will continue updating everyone. Thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate all of you. Happy New Year, and hopefully I will see you soon in another video. Thanks. Bye.